Far from the eyes of most of the world, in the heart of the South China Sea, lie two archipelagos whose rocky reefs, tiny islands, and shifting sandbars have become one of the most dangerous flashpoints on the planet. The Spratly and Paracel Islands, scattered clusters of rocks and reefs, have no large populations, yet they hold immense importance. Claimed in part or whole by China, Taiwan, Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia, Brunei, and even Indonesia, these tiny territories have triggered fierce diplomatic battles, military standoffs, and a race for control over the world's busiest sea lanes. The struggle for these islands is not new, but to understand why so many nations are locked in dispute, we must first understand the geography and the stakes. The South China Sea spans an enormous 2 million square kilometers. It connects the Pacific and Indian Oceans, carrying 1/3 of global shipping traffic. Billions of dollars in goods pass through these waters every single day. Beneath the sea lie rich fishing grounds and potentially vast reserves of oil and natural gas. Whoever controls these waters controls vital trade, resources, and strategic military routes. The Paracel Islands, located in the northern part of the South China Sea, are claimed by China, Taiwan, and Vietnam. China currently occupies and controls the entire Paracel chain, which it seized from South Vietnam in 1974 after a bloody naval clash. Since then, Beijing has heavily fortified these islands, building airstrips, radar stations, and military installations, making them key outposts for Chinese power projection. Further south lie the Spratly Islands, a far more complex and contested group. Unlike the Paracels, the Spratlys are claimed fully or partially by 7 different governments: China, Taiwan, Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia, Brunei, and Indonesia all assert rights over various parts. In the Spratlys, dozens of reefs, atolls, and rocks are occupied by competing nations. But it is China's expansive claim, known as the 9-dash line, that has drawn the most attention and alarm. Beijing's 9-dash line covers nearly the entire South China Sea. Based on historical maps, it says, date back centuries. The line cuts deeply into what international law recognizes as the exclusive economic zones, EEZs, of other countries like the Philippines and Vietnam. This sweeping claim was rejected by the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague in 2016, which ruled in favor of the Philippines, stating that China had no legal basis for much of its claim. China, however, dismissed the ruling, refusing to recognize the court's authority. Over the past decade, China has rapidly transformed its position in the South China Sea through a bold island-building campaign. On reefs and shoals barely above sea level, Chinese dredgers have constructed artificial islands, complete with airstrips, deep-water harbors, radar domes, missile systems, and military bases. Fiery Cross Reef, Subi Reef, and Mischief Reef, once barely visible at high tide, are now fortified outposts that extend China's reach deep into contested waters. Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia, and others have also built up outposts on smaller islands, but none on the scale or speed of China's development. Vietnam controls about 24 outposts in the Spratlys, while the Philippines maintains a handful, including the precarious outpost on 2nd Thomas Shoal, where a grounded naval vessel serves as a makeshift military station. The United States, while not a claimant, has inserted itself into the conflict through its Freedom of Navigation operations, FONOPs, regularly sending warships through contested waters to challenge what it views as unlawful maritime claims. Washington has repeatedly emphasized the importance of keeping the South China Sea open and free for international navigation, warning against any attempt to turn it into China's lake. These operations have led to tense encounters between U.S. and Chinese warships and military aircraft, raising fears of accidental conflict. In several incidents, Chinese vessels have sailed dangerously close to U.S. ships, while fighter jets have shadowed American reconnaissance flights. One miscalculation in these crowded, heavily militarized waters could spark a broader crisis between two global powers. Beyond the military dimension, the South China Sea dispute has significant economic consequences for the region's smaller nations. The sea's fishing grounds sustain millions of livelihoods. Yet overfishing, aggressive Coast Guard patrols, and harassment of fishing fleets have triggered countless confrontations. Vietnamese and Filipino fishermen have faced repeated confrontations with Chinese vessels, with boats rammed, confiscated, or driven away from traditional fishing grounds. Oil and gas exploration further complicates the picture. Vietnam and Malaysia have tried to tap energy resources within their EEZs, but Chinese pressure and the threat of naval confrontation have forced some projects to halt. For Beijing, control of these resources serves not only its economic interests, but its strategic ambition to reduce energy dependence on routes controlled by others. Diplomatic efforts to resolve the dispute have made little progress. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, has engaged in long-running talks with China to establish a binding code of conduct for the South China Sea. Yet years of negotiations have produced only non-binding agreements, while China continues to consolidate its physical presence on disputed features. The dispute also carries deep historical wounds. Vietnam points to its long history of fishing and administration in the Paracels and Spratlys, while the Philippines cites proximity and the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, to assert its claims. Malaysia, Brunei, and Indonesia focus on maritime entitlements defined by international law, but they too face increasing Chinese pressure. For Taiwan, which maintains control over Taiping Island, the largest naturally occurring feature in the Spratlys, the conflict is part of its larger struggle with Beijing over sovereignty and legitimacy. Though Taiwan's claims largely mirror China's historical arguments, its diplomatic isolation complicates its role in negotiations. In recent years, tensions have flared periodically. The Philippines has protested Chinese ships massing near Whitsun Reef. Malaysia has scrambled fighter jets in response to Chinese military aircraft near its waters. Vietnam has reported repeated incursions by Chinese survey vessels and Coast Guard ships. Indonesia has clashed with Chinese fishing fleets near the Natuna Islands, which lie south of Beijing's 9-dash line. All these incidents reveal a dangerous reality. While no full-scale war has erupted, the South China Sea remains one of the world's most volatile geopolitical hotspots. Any localized skirmish, accident, or escalation could spiral into a larger conflict involving major global powers. Yet beneath the surface militarization, the people of the region continue to live their daily lives. Fishermen still sail these contested waters, risking harassment for their catch. Coastal communities depend on the sea for their food and income. In many ways, they are the ones who suffer most from the uncertainty and tensions that grip these waters. The world watches carefully because the stakes extend far beyond the region. The South China Sea is not just a collection of distant islands, it is a crucial artery of global commerce, a battleground for competing visions of international law, and a test of how rising powers navigate disputes without igniting open conflict. The story of the Spratly and Paracel Islands is far from over. As nations continue to jostle for position, the world holds its breath, hoping that diplomacy, restraint, and dialogue can prevent these small islands from becoming the spark that lights a far greater fire. If you found this video informative, please give it a thumbs up, share it with friends, And don't forget to subscribe for more content like this.